The second stage of Russian-Ukrainian war has started today, Monday, April 18th, in between 3 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What does the second stage mean? What are the goals from both sides? What happens after this stage? These are all the questions that might have come to your mind, and we'll talk about it today in my today's video. What's up, investors and people of Reddit, it's the Russian Dude, and this is your daily update on Russian-Ukrainian war as of Monday, April 18th. You can see the main events of the day to my right, along with the timestamps. So if you are interested in any particular event, feel free to jump straight to that part of the video. Otherwise, please stay for the entire video so that you can be fully informed on everything significant that happened recently. The president of Ukraine, Vladimir, has confirmed that the second stage of this war has started. According to Russia, the second stage means active military action in Donbas region, which is also recognized as the second stage of the war by Ukraine. The main battles are now concentrated in the east of Ukraine, specifically in Lugansk and Donetsk regions. And President Zelensky mentioned that Ukraine will defend itself, that Ukraine will not give any of Ukrainian territories. He then also thanked all the Ukrainian soldiers who are the frontline defenders of the south of Ukraine, specifically in Mariupol region, and of east of Ukraine, specifically in Donbas and in Kharkov region. He says that they're the most heroic soldiers who are protecting the future of Ukraine. And he also mentioned that all the military action will now be concentrated in the east of Ukraine, in Lugansk and Donetsk region, for which Russian side has been preparing for the last couple of weeks. He said that no matter how many Russian soldiers will be present in these territories, Ukraine will not give up any of its lands. And then the advisor to the president of Ukraine, Alexei Arestovich, mentioned that Ukraine will be using the tactics of active defense, which basically means that Ukrainians will be protecting their lands by simultaneously launching counterattacks and taking back their territories. He then also mentioned that there are relative success in the south of Ukraine, specifically in Kherson region. And I assume that the main reason for the success in this region was the destruction of the Russian flagship Moskva, which one of the main goals of this ship was to assist the invasion of the Ukraine from the south. Zelensky also mentioned that in case Russia succeeds in its so-called second stage and takes Donbas, Russia can once again launch attacks on the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. For this reason, current military actions on the east of Ukraine can be a turning point in this war for both sides. And by the way, if you like this style of daily news reporting, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, at this very moment, YouTube does not allow me to monetize my content. That is why I have my Patreon, and I'll be donating all of my Patreon memberships at the end of each month to Ukraine. So if you want to be a part of this group donation, please make sure to check the link in the description. In these pictures you can see the condition of the city of Irpin, Ukraine. In this picture you can see how the position of Russian officials regarding this so-called military operation in Ukraine has been changing since the beginning of the invasion. At first, at the day of the invasion, February 24th, President Putin said that the main goal of this operation is to protect those people who were bombed by Ukrainians for 8 years, since 2014. Specifically, he was implying the residents of Donetsk and Lugansk regions. The next day, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, mentioned that their goal is now to liberate all the Ukrainians and make them select their future for themselves. So basically, as you can see, this so-called military operation expanded just from 2 regions, basically to an entire Ukraine. And then March 1st, the Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, mentioned that the main goal is to protect the citizens of Russia from Western countries who are using Ukrainian civilians to fight against Russia, which basically means that just 4 days later, the press secretary of Russia, Dmitry Peskov, mentioned that the main goal is now to protect Russia. And a couple of weeks later, the main goal was to prevent the genocide, to demilitarize Ukraine and to denazify it. It was that moment when Russia realized that fighting Ukraine was not that easy, so March 29th, the main goal of this operation was once again to liberate Donbas region. And April 7th, the main goal switched to preventing the Third World War. April 11th, the main goal of this operation went outside of the territory of Ukraine, and it became to prevent the total domination of the US over the world. But just 1 day later, it quickly came back to helping the people of Donbas. So it all basically means that even the highest officials in Russia kinda do not have any idea what they are doing. Russia has been extensively bombing residential areas in Kharkov, Ukraine. In this picture we can see allegedly the flagship of Russian Navy called Moskva, which was sunk last week. It is still being determined whether the picture is real or not, but many sources say that yes, this picture is real. Just as a reminder, this missile cruiser called Moskva was the flagship of Russian Navy, which simply means this was the biggest and the leading ship of the Russian army. And last week, Ukrainian forces used 2 Neptune missiles to sink it in Black Sea. However, according to the Russian side, the ship has sunk because there was a fire on board because of cigarette. And I don't know about you, but this definitely doesn't look like the consequences of an unfinished cigarette. It has been reported that the government of Russia has been doing so-called instructional talks with the relatives of the crew members of Moskva cruiser and survivors. And the main goal behind these talks is to warn them against saying too much. The relatives were reminded that the compensation as well as potential apartments for their losses are directly related to what they say. In my last video I gave an example of a ridiculous propaganda from Russian side. And today I decided to include one more example just to show you how stupid it can get. So according to the Ministry of Defense of Russia, it has been reported that Ukrainian Nazis formed approximately 70 groups, which main goal will be to bomb Orthodox churches. The intelligence says that these bombings will happen on Orthodox Pascha, which will happen between April 23rd and 24th. And the main goal for these bombings will be to later blame Russia. The furniture prices in the UK has risen by approximately 17% in comparison to the previous month. And the main reason why would I bring up this news is to talk about the reaction of some Russian patriots. When you open the comments, all you basically can see is some Russians humiliating British citizens. And the type of comments is something like this: ha ha ha, take this, stupid Brits, so what, now you're gonna sleep on the floor, no more beds for you, and so on. But whenever you mention that the prices for basically everything inside Russia, including groceries, increased by at least 50%, the same patriots kinda remain silent. Or some extreme uncurable patriots will say to you, so what, we're paying money so that our government is stronger, we're paying money so this money can be used to fight Nazis in Ukraine. Well, you get the idea. On this picture you can see the current TV schedule for 2 main federal channels in Russia. And so the only time slots when there is no news or propaganda are the following. First of all, there is a program about health from 9:20 AM until 10 AM. And then there is one episode of a TV show from 10 PM to 11 PM. As a result, we only have 1 hour and 40 minutes of recreational TV and 22 hours and 20 minutes of news and propaganda. Approximately 1/3 of Russian high schoolers think that it is pointless to build future in Russia, and only 6% of them want to tie their future with some kind of government role, which in my personal opinion is a very good representation between the differences in the mindsets of younger and older generations of Russians. In this video we can see the bombings that are happening in the city of Lvov, Ukraine, which is located in the western part of Ukraine. Today Ukraine has sent the first part of the questionnaire for European Union membership. The government team of Ukraine has started working on the second part of this application, which brings the membership inside the European Union one step closer. Former government security advisor of the United Kingdom, Lord Ricketts, mentioned that increasingly desperate Vladimir Putin might attack NATO bases, which continue sending weapons to Ukraine. What he meant here is that Russia thought that invading Ukraine will be extremely easy, and this can be done in just a couple of days. But because Western countries continuously support Ukraine by sending weapons, this invasion is being stalled. For this reason, NATO bases can be bombed to prevent sending weapons to Ukraine, but at the same time this will mean that even more countries will now be involved in this war. In this picture you can see who different countries blame for this conflict in Ukraine. As you can see, almost no one blames Ukraine, including long-lasting friends of Russia, India and China. But interesting part here is that a little bit more than 20% of Americans blame America for this Russian-Ukrainian war. And feel free to pause the video if you want to see more details. Vladimir Putin signed an order under which all the stocks of Russian publicly traded companies must be delisted from international stock exchanges. Since the beginning of this so-called military operation, Russian currency ruble has been strongly devaluating against US dollar. Before the invasion, the exchange rate was approximately 75-80 rubles for $1, and at the very peak it was approximately 140 rubles for $1. There was significant measures attempted by the Central Bank of Russia to stabilize the exchange rate, and among such measures was to prohibit individuals from buying international currencies, specifically US dollar and European euro. Later on there was even a 12% commission if you wanted to buy, let's say, US dollars with Russian rubles. For this reason, in many cases buying US dollar was not making any financial sense, and because of this the national currency of Russia has been stabilized. destabilizing. But recently more and more of these restrictions have been lifting. And starting this Monday, April 18th, Russians are now once again able to buy international currencies without any commission. Simply put, I'm expecting that the Russian national currency will start devaluating once again. Zelensky also mentioned that in case it is required, Ukraine can fight against Russia for 10 more years. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine has mentioned that there haven't been any significant talks between Russia and Ukraine in the past weeks. It was also mentioned that President Zelensky does not want to talk to Russia because of the events that happened in Bucha, Volnovakha, Borodyanka and Mariupol. The Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi, who was speaking both with President Zelensky and President Putin recently, mentioned that President Putin does not want to end this war in the nearest future. Whenever the Prime Minister was asking President Putin the following questions, such as when are you planning to meet with Zelensky or when are you planning to stop the fire, Putin was only replying, no, the time has not come yet. Russia has been demanding the US to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. In case those deliveries will not stop, Russia is now threatening the US with so-called unforeseen consequences. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has given us a new data about the potential losses of Russia in this war. As of today, Russia has lost approximately 20,600 soldiers, 790 tanks and 167 planes. And if you want to see more details, feel free to pause the video and ask me for the translations. Google Maps is no longer hiding secret military objects of Russia. One of the main events of previous week was the capture of one of the best friends of Vladimir Putin, Viktor Medvedchuk. For those of you who do not know who he is, he was basically an infiltrator in Ukraine whose main goal was to destabilize the country from the inside. So right now he is located in one of the detention centers in Ukraine, and in one of his most recent videos to President Putin and President Zelensky, he mentioned that he is ready to be extradited to Russia for an exchange for Ukrainian soldiers. Ilya Navalny, who is reportedly a third cousin of Alexei Navalny, who is the biggest opposition force in Russia, was found dead in Ukraine. Last night, the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, started talking about the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. One of the first things he mentioned is that Ukraine will be able to start planning everything from scratch, which basically means that, for example, car roads can be built in those areas where they logistically make sense. He also mentioned that one of the main and priority goals will be to provide housing for those people who lost their living spaces. The second stage of reconstruction would be to fully rebuild everything that has been destroyed. And for this, Ukraine is already actively looking for international and internal architects. Another thing President Zelensky mentioned is that Ukraine will be creating many memorials so that future generations can be constantly reminded about the aggression of its neighbor. He then summed up by saying that the situation in Mariupol is still extremely difficult, and the only way Ukraine can continue fighting against this aggression is if Western countries will continue sending the weapons. These two maps show the state of the city of Mariupol as of April 16th versus April 17th, and the main military action is concentrated around Azovstal steel factory, where according to Russian side is the main concentration of so-called alleged Ukrainian Nazis. So as you can see, all the territory which is highlighted in red was previously occupied by Russia, and those territories highlighted in yellow is the advancement of Russian troops, which basically means that steel factory Azovstal is doing now its last stand. However, last week it was reported that Azov battalion has received significant reinforcements. Thank you so much for your attention, stay safe and see you tomorrow.